Hello.
I'm
Welcome.
channeling
My
my
name is
inner
Adam.
Northman. I'm channeling my inner Northman.
And that's Adrian. Welcome to Cast from the Crypt. We are doing an impromptu episode because we've just discovered that we both over the weekend watched The Northman.
We just watched this movie. What day did you see it?
I saw it
Not that this is relevant
yesterday, or no,
to
I
you
saw
all
it
listening.
Saturday.
I also watched it
I
Saturday.
think we watched it at the same time in different theaters. Shoulda, coulda, woulda.
No, I saw this movie and I'm glad I did. If I can speak for you briefly, I think you and I are both Robert Eggers fans and really like what he's done within the horror genre.
Yeah.
And this was a little different, but I think there were some elements there reminiscent of his other works.
Yeah. I am hugely a fan, absolutely. Robert Eggers, to me, is known for kind of the historical aspects of his stories. He always tries really hard to get kind of like the speech patterns and mannerisms and, what have you of the time down. He famously, for The Witch and The Lighthouse, used some dialogue from like actual primary sources, like letters and stuff from the time periods he was talking about. And so to see a movie about Vikings from a guy who's known for his dedication to history, I was so excited. I mean, every piece of Viking media is kind of like over the top, overblown, and like it always feels like it doesn't really present a good, accurate picture. And there's so many gaps in what we know about Vikings and their societies and their religion. But I went into this movie wanting to see cool Vikings do Viking things, and that's exactly what I got, and I was exactly satisfied.
Yeah, no, I agree. I find Vikings really fascinating, if not like morbidly fascinating, because
Everyone does.
yeah, but they were so hardcore and like kind of awful also. Um,
Very awful, yeah. I mean,
yeah, and I don't know. I've never seen other than Lighthouse, I guess, which wasn't a huge production. It was two actors really, and they were larger names than he had worked with in The Witch, them being Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson, respectively. But this, I think, is well, not I think this is his biggest project by far, with a A-list cast, and that's why I was like, interested, a little cautious, but optimistic. And I think I was right in being optimistic because this movie was really good.
yeah, a huge cast, but also a lot of people he worked with before. Like, I'm glad he
Right.
picks favorites. Anya Taylor-Joy was in it. She's a huge part of it, and she's phenomenal, isn't she? She was great in The Witch, and now she's great in this. Everything I see her
Yeah.
in, I love her so much.
No, I agree. She was great in this. It was great to see Ethan Hawke in this, who, to my knowledge, they've never worked together, but I'm a fan of his, and this was super different. He plays a Viking king that's murdered and is essentially what sets the whole plot in motion. But I thought he was great. Willem Dafoe is always fantastic, though I could have used more of him in the movie,
You always
personally.
can.
Right. You always can. But no, I think everybody brought their A game here. And we're not talking about really the two main characters portrayed by Alexander Skarsgård and Nicole Kidman.
Nicole
Um,
Kidman.
yeah, Nicole Kidman.
How was she a main character?
She was the mom.
You say the two main characters. Why is she the second main character?
That's a good point. That's a good point. Well, but
So she feels pretty secondary. I don't know.
she is not
I thought you were
secondary.
gonna say Anya Taylor Joy.
She's being avenged.
She was way more important.
She also has a lot of screen time and dialogue, but nonetheless, Nicole Kidman's good in this.
Bjork.
And
Can we talk about Bjork? I was
okay,
so excited that Bjork was in this movie, and she
I
was
was
great.
confused because where is she?
She's the like blind soothsayer woman who like
That's Bjork?
yeah, that's Bjork.
Wow.
She's also like not in it for
The lead
probably
of the
more than
movie is
5 minutes. Yeah, she also is the main character. Oh no.
I've been critical of Alexander Skarsgård in other things. He is in the really awful Stand series that came out like either last year or the year before that. Um, and I don't think he's very good in it. And he was also in Big Little Lies with Nicole Kidman. Awkwardly, they played partners in that movie. In this
Well,
movie, they
wh-
play well. In this movie, of course, they're mother son. Um, and he was probably the weakest part of that series as well. That might just be because he was working alongside such talented actors. But in this movie, I really thought he held his own.
I
And I,
agree.
yeah, I think him and Anya Taylor-Joy were a joy to watch.
Oh. Yeah, I
Yeah,
went into it with the same thing. Like, I've not been impressed with Alexander Skarsgård in the past, but I thought, okay, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. And I'm glad I was optimistic about it because he did a really good job. He's in Godzilla versus King Kong, isn't he?
he is.
He's
He's
not good in that movie.
no, he's bad in that. He's yeah, I he's in like a lot of really bad movies too.
I'm glad he proved
Before he
himself.
did Big Little Lies, which is a fantastic show on HBO. But before he did that, he was in The Legend of Tarzan, which I don't know if you remember that at all. That was an
Oh,
atrocious
yeah. Wow.
attempt at bringing back Tarzan, and it didn't work. It was really, really bad. Before that, he was in Battleship with Rihanna.
Yeah, these are all. I mean, I guess you could give him the benefit of the doubt of like these are all terrible movies with dumb plots and like the worst script writing I've ever seen. But also, he did all of the. He consistently did bad movies, so I don't know. But this is he proved himself here. I'll give him this movie.
No,
So
yeah, this movie is great, and with a genius behind the camera like Robert Eggers,
yeah,
make no
great job.
mistake.
It feels like Robert Eggers was just like, I want to make a really good Viking movie, and he did, and I'm so glad he did.
Well, and it's so different from everything else he's done, right?
Yeah,
The Witch, wall to wall, is a story about a family, and you basically only see what's happening within their unit. The Lighthouse, similarly, is focused on two people on an isolated island, and you really only see the events that take place between them. This movie is sprawling and big and epic in every sense. And I know that it's an adaptation of a Nordic epic, but like, damn, it's hardcore. It's a really, really completely different project for him.
I mean, yeah, just the size of the cast. Like, the biggest movie he made was the biggest cast was The Vitch, and it was 5 people, six if you include the infant. You know, 6-ish, 7-ish people, about 5 main characters. And this cast is huge. There are hugely coordinated like fight scenes and everything. Like they have whole villages, multiple villages. They go on ships. There's crews. There's so many just people in this movie compared to anything he's done in the past. And so it felt like it could have been maybe more than he could chew, but it wasn't. He managed everything, and it's good job. I loved it.
Yeah,
And it
I
is
did too.
it's epic. You're right. That is what it is. It's unepic. This is the most like classic hero's journey you will ever find. And it's so refreshing to see such a like ancient form of storytelling just done to a T and executed so successfully in this movie. It really felt that the human condition has been captured once again. I don't know.
Yeah, there's a lot that happens. Actually, I had misread the runtime going into the movie and thought that it was an hour and a half, and it was actually 2 hours and a half.
2 hours,
Um,
40 minutes.
yeah, thank you. So even longer than an entire hour longer than I thought it was going to be, and I felt that immediately. Like I knew when the quest had begun that this was going to take much longer than I had initially thought, and I did feel the runtime.
Did
Like
you?
personally, yeah, I did feel the runtime. I thought there were parts that dragged here and there, but for the most part, I thought it was pretty entertaining. I don't know. Do you want to get into spoilers since it's such a new movie?
We can, but first of all, I watched this with 3 other people, and we were all in agreement that You absolutely couldn't tell how long this movie is. I thought it
Oh,
was
I felt
never a slog. I was impressed. Like it, for me at least, maybe not for you, but it grabbed me and kept my attention for 2 hours and 40 minutes. And that is a rare movie that can pull off that long of a runtime. It's a bold move to be that long as a movie, but I think this movie earned it.
I don't disagree that the movie grabbed me, right? But I don't know. I think some things took a little too long.
Well, it's also maybe you also expected it to be an hour shorter, and maybe that probably had
Yeah,
an
that's true.
influence.
I misread the runtime. Not misread. I'm giving myself too much credit. I did math incorrectly and and did not know how many minutes there were in an hour. Uh,
Well, spoiler alert from here on out, but I'd like to talk about the plot, the hero's journey.
Go ahead.
Okay, it's the exact hero's journey to a T. We have our main character, our hero. He is sent out on a quest at the beginning of the movie. He's given a boon from the gods. He has to fulfill a prophecy. Every box is ticked, and I loved it.
I will say, like from the beginning, because the way they set this up is you meet Alexander Skarsgård's character. His name is Amleth, right? Am I saying that right?
Sure,
Yeah,
Amleth
his name
omelet.
is Omelet. But Amleth is he's a prince. He's an heir to a sizable Viking kingdom, and his dad is a powerful king portrayed by Ethan Hawke. Now they come back from a conquest, a battle, and Ethan Hawke is basically knocking on death's door because he was severely wounded in battle. He's like fine, but he knows that it will affect him long term, and he's prepared for his death. And when he comes back, he sees his son's innocence, realizes that he's not quite ready, and decides he's going to prepare him. And so they go and they do psychedelics together.
They do crazy drugs with Willem Dafoe being their
Yeah,
spirit
yeah,
guide, and it's real freaky.
they do psychedelic drugs with Willem Dafoe and Bond. And as an audience member, it was a super weird sequence, but I'm used to Robert Eggers' work, so it. And I thought personally, this scene was really, really powerful because the relationship between the two is clearly incredibly, strong and important. And you can tell that this young prince really looks up to his hardened father. And then, of course, shortly after this scene, we are hit with a massive blow. Amleth has to watch his father get uh, not just kind of cheap shotted with arrows, but then like brutally murdered. He's stabbed like 8 times with these long spears by men on horseback. He has no chance to fight.
Yeah, he's killed in
Um,
dramatic Viking fashion, of course.
yeah, but also it's super cheap. Like it's
Yeah.
dramatic, it's super cheap.
Fjolnir, I believe is his name, who becomes known as Fjolnir the Brotherless because he betrays his brother, is the usurper. He's the one that has killed Amleth's father, the king, in order to take his throne. Amleth has to escape, but his uncle has ordered him to be killed in order to make sure all contestants to the throne except himself are eradicated. And he's running through the woods. A man grabs him, and in brutal fashion, you see him cut this guy's nose off and then escape. For the rest of this movie, this man is noseless, and it's so
God,
metal. But
no, I loved when they brought him back. Like
yeah,
later on in the movie, they bring him back. He's noseless. It reminded me of Shadow of Mordor, where the orcs that you maim stay that way and then you look them up later. It was great.
he
Um,
runs back to his village and finds that Fjolnir's men are absolutely taking over. He watches his mother get taken by Fjolnir, so he runs away, finds a boat, and he just pushes it out to sea and starts rowing away. And he's saying like a mantra to himself over and over again: I'll avenge you, father. I'll save you, mother. I'll kill you, Fjolnir. And he just says that over again, and then cut to later, cut to now. He's a grown man. He's actually a berserker with a group of other berserkers, and they're about to go pillage someplace, and that's like, here we are, here's the Vikings gonna do some Viking stuff, you know. And that's the inciting incident. That's the beginning of the story.
Yeah, and it's already such an epic opening, but man, it's like it just you're right, it does grab you. Right? That's the best way of describing it. It's a hell of a hook. Um I think it's hilarious that they cut from this incredibly unassuming kid and all of a sudden he's Alexander Skarsgård who is like 6'4" and pure muscle.
Yeah, and a
Uh
bunch of other muscular men. They're all wearing wolf pelts and naked, and they're all gonna go
they're howling.
tear a place apart. Yeah, and they after they do this ritual, and they all like go berserker, and you know, Viking berserkers are like a absolutely famous part of like Viking culture. I'll say they're, for those that don't know, like they had these berserker warriors in Viking armies that would go berserk, and nobody knows what that means or how they did that, but they would like just go crazy basically. You could like chop their arms off and they wouldn't care, and like, you know. But for as mysterious as that is, Robert Eggers found a way to show that as real and believable. And then they run towards this village that's got this wooden wall around it. There's men like trying to defend it, and the first thing we see is they run in. Their whole like pack is there. Some guy yells, signals the alarm bell, and then throws a spear at them. And one of them catches the spear and throws it back and kills the guy. And immediately I was like, whoa. Like,
No,
wow.
yeah, it's extreme and it's almost unbelievable, but you totally buy it too. Like they're in this, and that's actually what I'm sure you looked it up, but like that's what berserkers were. They were in like beast-like trances, and they would just move and move and move. You kind of said that already, and I guess it is hard to imagine that ever being a thing, but it is captured so well in this movie, and the spear throw is just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, then they
They
like just
storm,
scale a wall too.
yeah, they storm the walls of this village and scale it, dodging spears and swords that are being, kind of jutted at them from above. And they take the village in what seems like minutes, basically.
Yeah, I mean, as like extraordinary and maybe unbelievable as it is, like you're still watching it happen.
Yeah, yeah. And it's all done in camera. The action is done in camera. There's no cheap cutaway shots.
And I
You
believe it's
see
one
everything.
long shot or one long take, isn't it?
Right,
You
right.
just
That's what it
follow
looked like.
Alexander Skarsgård like through this whole fight scene, and that's what's like that makes it like so incredible, and like what a hard thing to film too. Anytime there's a long take, I'm impressed, and if it's like a battle sequence like this, that's even more impressive.
This scene is also important because it lets us know that this hero that we're following is imperfect, right? He's a part of this really brutal group of men that in this sequence do not spare anybody, right? Shortly after they take it, take the village, you see them put a bunch of, I think what they call them weaklings, um, and young children too, and they put them in this barn and just burn it down and ignore their cries for help. And Alexander Skarsgård's character is removed from it. He's like they show him kind of ignoring it all, removing himself from the laughter and stuff of the group. But ultimately, if he's a part of that, he's not separated, and it's what he grew up in, right? That conquering. Um, and I think that's important. It gives us an important understanding of who we're following.
I do too. It's also like Vikings are cool and everybody likes Vikings or whatever, but it's easy to glorify them.
Yeah,
Use
yeah,
this kind of grounds you as like, no, they're still they still are plundering, you know.
yeah. They did terrible things,
They're
right?
pillaging, yeah.
I mean, they use human cattle,
Yeah, that's everybody they don't burn in the farm, they just take as slaves.
right? That's a great point, right?
Yeah.
Because we do kind of glorify and romanticize Vikings, but it was brutal.
Absolutely. And this movie is just like a Vikings are cool love letter, it would be that. And I feel like the importance of this scene too is to kind of like not romanticize them like that. It's to kind of bring some reality to the harshness of
Mm.
their way of life. Moving on, I guess. As they take this whole village as slaves, Alexander Skarsgård learns that some of the slaves are going to the kingdom of Fjolnir the Brotherless, as he is now called. He finds out that his kingdom immediately got taken over by another king, and he now lives as not a king, but the chieftain of a village. And he's fallen much from greatness, is much less impressive. But upon hearing this, Alexander Skarsgård, uh, Amleth, I'll call him. Upon hearing this, Amleth immediately brands himself with the brand they use to mark each slave and swims out to the slave ship that's leaving the shore and jumps aboard. You know his plan. He's going to disguise himself as a slave and get close to his uncle so that he may strike and fulfill the oath he made to his father that he would avenge him.
It's upon that ship where he meets Olga, who is his new sorceress GF, played by Anya Taylor-Joy. Um, she immediately spots him out to be pretending something he's not. She refers to him as a wolf in sheep's clothing and says she doesn't buy it. But despite this, they bond pretty quickly. I think it's the ship almost capsizing that brings them together, right? Yeah, there's a storm, and they show just how terrible it is, and the slaves are thrashing around and hitting their heads on the floor while the crew members are just trying to keep the thing, I don't know, above the water. And we see them kind of embrace for the first time here. Like she rests on his shoulder. They're exhausted from a rough night. And we basically know at this point that we've got something brewing here.
In that village they plunder at night is where we see Bjork. Basically, she's like this ethereal soothsayer who's blind and is wearing this crazy shamanistic getup, and she tells Amleth a prophecy that he has to slay his uncle in a lake of fire before the gates of hell. Hell with one L, that is, which is sort of the Norse equivalent of Hades. And that's really metal.
It is really metal.
And so he's going to do just that. Now we get to the village. It's not very impressive, but it is ruled by Fjolnir the Brotherless. And the slaves are taken to him. And he, of course, does not recognize the 6-foot tall beast that was once his little nephew, who he thinks is dead. They're taken as slaves, and one night, Amleth hears like the howling of wolves and the yipping of this fox, and he follows this fox to a cave where he meets who he calls a witch. It's another sort of shaman man, and this man has the mummified head of Willem Dafoe, and it's very sad to see him dead so quick. But
Yeah, but it makes sense, right? Because Fjolnir had to kill him too. He was loyal to his brother.
yeah, and he said he's been talking with his severed head, and this is something they do. They do the magic in this movie, I think, good justice. It's, I'll say, slightly magical. Like there definitely is a magic, but it's like subtle. It's shamanistic. It's all like in the ritual you find the magic of this world, and I really appreciate that. The
Yeah.
mythology, I personally take a very big interest in, and I'm very happy to see it covered so much in this movie. And this is where we get our wonderful initial first mission. Go collect this magic sword, the boon from the gods. The shaman tells him that in this abandoned, there's a crypt where he must go find this blade that can never be dulled and is made of steel, and the hilt is the bones of the Jotuns. And it's like, they really hype this sword up. And so he goes off to go get it, and he finds this crypt, and there is this mummified Draugr king holding the sword that he must defeat in battle before he can claim it. And it's so cool.
Yeah, it's very very cool. I will say the sword's design is super neat. The inscription, the like the runes on it, they look really cool. That being said, like when he's using it and you actually watch him kind of like unsheathing the thing, it seems really rather utilitarian. Like it's a sword, you
Yeah.
know? There's like this massive buildup to it, and it looks cool when the undead king is holding it. Uh, but after that, like I don't know, I wanted to see more of the sword.
I like that it's used sparsely because it feels like really special in magic. It can only be used under very specific circumstances. There is of course one catch to the sword. It can only be unsheathed during in the moonlight or in front of the gates of hell, 1L, which is so cool.
Yeah, no, it's pretty awesome. Um, and I agree with what you were saying earlier, like the magic, because there is magic, but it's incredibly grounded. It's a really unique approach to this sort of thing. Like you're not going to see the world's serpent in this, or is it the world's serpent?
It's a singular world.
Oh, excuse me. But what we do get is still really enchanting and very cool. And this sword is an important piece of that. I think it really helps ground the movie.
Yeah, it is the magical realism too. Like he does fight this Draugr king for his sword, but then at the end of the fight, it's sort of alluded that that was a vision, and then he just takes the sword from the corpse. And there's another scene later where he's being carried away by a Valkyrie across the tundra, and then he wakes up, and it was a vision, and Anya Taylor-Joy was really the one carrying him. But you still get a sense of the magic. It feels like the real world still, but like this is
Yeah.
the magic these people believe in, and it is magic that has weight to it and influence. Like they're not just doing rituals to arbitrary gods because it's their religion. Like it has purpose. The cultural value of the magical natures of this movie has meaning other than it's just their culture.
The slaves on Fjolnir's island, because is it an island that he's
It's
on?
Iceland.
Is it like an Iceland
It's
island, or is it
Iceland.
like he's on the
He's
coast?
on
But it's not.
Iceland.
But is it all of Iceland? He doesn't own all of Iceland.
No, but he lives on Iceland.
Well, his little chunk of land. Uh, they, of course, the slaves do work, and things like laundry or putting up fences, getting the sheep back where they need to be, etc. But uh, my favorite scene, well, maybe not my favorite scene in the whole movie, but one of my favorite scenes is when they use the strong male slaves to play this game. And I've looked up the game, and it was a real thing. I have no idea how to pronounce it though. Um, but it roughly translates in English to ball game. And it's essentially just a very primitive lacrosse. And Fjolnir, his children, his wife, they're using this opportunity to get some entertainment out of the slaves. And it's a brutal game played with these uh, almost massive spoons that are used to launch the balls, but they're made of really heavy wood, and the ball is maybe made of stone. Um, and they're basically just watching each other, or they're just basically watching their slaves kill each other on the field to win this game. And I'm sure that if you win, there's some sort of reward, and that's why they're going so hard. Um, but a very welcome face was in this scene, and that was Hapthor Bjornsson, the Mountain, one of the strongest men in the world. And there is an incredible showdown between him and Alexander Skarsgård. in this scene that I just loved watching.
In those that don't know, Hafthor Bjornsson is huge in Iceland. He's like a
National hero?
he is a national hero. But no, he's a strong man. He's a weightlifter. He's like a famous weightlifter. I think he's the strong man. I think he won.
Not anymore.
Is he
No
not? I think
longer.
he's been
No.
usurped, sadly.
Yeah, he is one of the strongest men in the world, but
He
he
used to
still
be.
rocks. Yeah, he
So
still
yeah.
rocks them.
Yeah, that's what he's famous for. He's at this point like literally famous just because he's huge. He's one of the tallest people ever already, and then is a weightlifter. So he's massive.
Yeah, he is 6'9".
Wow. Oh my
Right.
god. Yeah.
But Alexander Skarsgård is also huge. He's 6'4".
He's 6'4" and ripped, and somehow Hafthor manages to make him look small.
Right off the bat, like you understand when you see Hapthor on the other side of the field of this game, you know that it's gonna end poorly. And sure enough, he just brutalizes the other slaves during this sequence, and only Alexander Skarsgård and him are left standing by the end of it. And of course, the royalty, I guess we could call them, the Fjolnir's family, they are loving this, including his two sons. Fjolnir's youngest son, and this is the only son that he has with Nicole Kidman's character, um, who is of course also Amleth's mother. He runs onto the field because I guess the game just isn't happening fast enough for him. He's a little kid. And he picks up the ball and starts to run. But that's when uh, Hapthor sees blood and sprints towards this little kid and throws him on the ground. Um, and just as he's about to swing at the ball, which is placed directly next to this little kid's head, right? He of course would kill him with this final blow. Alexander Skarsgård tackles him to the ground and bashes his head in using his own skull. Uh, and it's a really brutal moment. I think he did it out of love both for his mother and his half brother. Um, but like I was saying before, it puts him in an important position because after this scene, he's approached by um, his cousin, who is Fjolnir's heir, and he's told, "You will be prepared, or excuse me, you will be rewarded for not only your win but for your loyalty, and we won't make you do as hard of labor around the farm." And he's put in this like trustworthy, almost position of respect now, and he uses it to his advantage.
He's given like a few more privileges. And this is all, it's very kind of Hamlet. It's like he's waiting for the moment to strike. And now he has Olga, Anya Taylor-Joy's character, in on it with him. So when they come back, I guess it's time for Amleth to make his first move. And he brutally they're having like a big celebration for the game, like everybody's drunk. His cousin brother, the older one, his name's Thorir, and he is with a bunch of his friends. They all get drunk and they stumble out of this longhouse that they're celebrating in. Amleth strikes in this moment. He doesn't kill Thorir. Thorir goes away, but all of his friends that are like, I guess, fellow, sort of higher up, more noble characters, he kills them all, and they wake up the next morning, and you really only get like a glimpse of it in one panning shot, but he has in the most horrifically brutal scene in the whole movie. He's cut up their bodies and like staked them to a wall in this weird shape. It looks like it's a horse. The
Yeah, I
corpse
think
horse.
he made them look like a horse.
Yeah, the corpse horse. It was, it was super
God,
freaky.
it was
It
horrifying
was
and
so
disgusting.
freaky. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And of course, it chills all of them on this farm to their core. Um, Fjolnir's eldest, what'd you say his name was again?
Thorir.
Thorir is really, really just obviously destroyed by this, considering those are, his closest friends. And this is when they start tightening the rules on the slaves. They're going to pay more attention to them because they are suspecting that maybe it was one of them. But of course, now they do not suspect the 6'4" super ripped one
Well,
that's very quiet.
they suspect it to be the Christians. They say the Christians might have done this.
Right.
So,
Which, how interesting was that,
well,
right?
no, okay, for context, at this point in Icelandic history, there had begun to be Christian missionaries, and I guess these are, of course, kind of, a more traditional, less exposed to that culture group. And they think it's the Christians because they say the Christians' God is a corpse nailed to a tree. And so they think that these corpses being nailed up is maybe somehow symbolic of that. So Thorir, in a bit of anger, is like abusing all their Christian slaves. But then they determine, and the wise woman of like their group determines that no, this is not the work of any man. This is like a spirit. There's an evil spirit haunting their village now, and they have to appease the gods. So they are going to that night in a way to maybe protect themselves. They're going to make a sacrifice to Freyr. He's like a goddess. He's a god of like fertility and kingship and everything. He's not like particularly violent from what I understand, but they are praying to him for protection, basically. And that night is when they're going to make the sacrifice, and that is when Emleth strikes once again. They're gonna just sacrifice a slave, I think, and then they go into the shrine to see if it's happened. And instead, the wise woman is tied up, and the man she was, I guess, the wise man she was working with is hanging upside down, and he's been disemboweled.
And she's tied up using his intestines.
Yeah, and it's grotesque once again. Like, and they interpret this as Freyr has chosen his own sacrifice, and they should be good now. There should not be any more haunting of the spirits. But this is something I like about the movie. Once again, it's like the magic is grounded in reality in a way. Like they are haunted by a spirit. Amleth starts referring to himself as a spirit of revenge, like his whole existence from the time his father was killed onward has been him being like this hateful vengeance creature. The only reason he's alive, the only reason he's driven is to get revenge. And so in a way he is an evil spirit. And that is how he can do these inhuman things. But nothing they do is going to stop him. The only thing that can be done is he will fulfill the prophecy and uphold the vow he made to his father to avenge his father, save his mother, and kill Fjolnir. He keeps saying that before he can kill him, because it has now been prophesied, of course, that he can only kill him at a lake of fire in front of the gates of hell, which we see pretty quickly off. Iceland is a massive volcano, so there's, of course, like at the peak of this mountain, there's a pool of lava where the volcano kind of spews ash, and that's, of course, where the final battle is going to take place. And you know that throughout the movie. You know the prophecy has to be fulfilled, of course. But Amleth has said that Fjolnir has made my life a hell, and now I will make his one as well. Something along those lines. So that's why he keeps doing this.
Something that I think is worthy of note, that I think is really clever that they did in this movie, is the person that actually is taking Fjolnir's rage in these moments, where he's finding corpses, away from the slaves and puts it more into the she really attributes it more to the supernatural, is his wife, who is, of course, the queen, who was previously married to his brother, who is Amla's father. And I think they use it as a narrative tool. Like when I was watching it, I was thinking, does she know that something's up, right? That there's a slave. Does she sense that one of the slaves is not what they're pretending to be? Because she kept telling Fjolnir, Freyr chose his own sacrifice. And in the scene before that, she also talks her son and Fjolnir down. And I think it's just a nice subtle choice, because the twist that we get later on with her is I didn't see it coming. I don't know if you did, but
oh no,
this was one of the things that I think that they employed to make that twist more impactful.
Well, I guess let's move on to that. So I guess fast forward to there's another night. Now is going to be the night. They're not messing around anymore. There's been too much death. Everybody's on guard. They start to arm the slaves even and are setting them out. Everybody's going to stay awake this night and guard the camp. This is when Olga and Amleth are going to make their move. Olga has, she herself is kind of like a shaman, and she has gathered uh, some mushrooms. Nothing good is going to come of this. Um, while she's alone making like the broth that she's going to feed everybody, she puts some mushrooms in that broth. So then they feed everybody on guard. It's a misty night. Everybody has just a few fires, and she feeds them this broth, and they start losing their minds. They're tripping. They're tripping balls now because they've eaten this magic mushroom soup. And they don't know that. And they think, oh my god, the spirit is striking. One man, like, kills himself, just slays himself, stabs himself. The noseless guy is, like, freaking out. There's this mist that falls that night, and they think there's spirits in the mist. They don't know what's going on. And they see these men killing themselves, and I think Fjolnir's wife says, like, the spirit is within them now. We cannot help them.
Yeah, that's
They
exactly.
interpret it as they're possessed. And in a way, like, aren't they? Like, isn't the magic real? They are acting crazy of not their own volition, and they are, stabbing themselves to death like they would not do normally.
And it's only because of Fiona the men are so unwilling to share their food with the slaves that are also going to be keeping watch at night that they are ultimately undone. Olga plans for that. She knows that they're going to eat it amongst themselves, not share any of it, and that's why they're the only ones affected. It's genius, and I love that. I love that they are the reason that they are undone.
Yes.
Right.
Well, during this
Um,
commotion is when Amleth goes into the longhouse that his mother and uncle live in, and this is where he's going to reveal himself to his mother. And this is that twist you were talking about. So do you want to get into it?
yeah. So Fjolnir walks into their longhouse. I don't know what I was expecting as an audience member, but what I was hoping for initially, I'm really happy with what we got instead, was he would find his mother and that there would be an immediate connection that she would automatically recognize, oh my god, it's my son, and there would be a warm embrace. This is a Robert Eggers movie, and you don't quite get that. Um, she is shocked to see him at first, and you don't quite know which direction she's going to go, right? But he's not immediately met with warmth from his mother, and she ultimately tells uh, Amleth that she's happy here and she doesn't want him to make the decision that she feels he's going to make, because he does reveal to her that he's there to save her, and of course that implies that he's going to kill his uncle.
So, in a cruel twist, she tells him, do not ruin my happiness.
That's
I begged your uncle to kill your father. Your father was a beast. Evidently she's from England. She says, I was not a noble princess who married your father from England. I was stolen and kidnapped. And she reveals that she has a brand on herself, that she was enslaved, and that that his father was like a beast. She hated life with him, and she begged his uncle to kill him, and she even told his uncle to kill him, Amleth, her own son. And she was so cruel in this scene too. I was like,
Yeah, no.
damn, he's got a
She's
sword, he
super.
could kill you.
Well, and of course she knows that he won't, right?
Yeah,
He
and
he,
she's
he
just
even
cruel,
he even says it later on that he would never strike down a woman,
which I
um,
thought was great that he drew the line somewhere. Like,
which is crazy
it was
considering
crazy
all the
considering,
other things they do.
yeah, the pillaging we saw.
Yeah, but in what is even a more gut wrenching twist, she tells him, if you're going, and of course, this is not a direct quote, but she essentially tells her son, if you're going to do this, if you're that brutal and you can kill my two sons, one of them being your half brother, and your uncle, then you can take me as your queen and we will rule together. And she kisses him. And it's super uncomfortable. It made me cringe and grimace and squirm in my chair. And then Nicole Kidman is just such a fantastic actor. When he reels back from this and pulls away in shock, the guttural laugh, evil laugh that she lets out is so chilling. Um, and he ultimately he runs out, not knowing what to do
Yeah.
with himself.
Well,
Um,
she's telling like she's trying to seduce him so she can take his sword from her, but she's unsuccessful.
yeah,
And
she can't.
so now he has to flee because he knows he can't kill his mother. But she's gonna tell Fjolnir that he is here, he is the spirit, and they're gonna hunt him down. So he, I guess, to get his anger out,
Yeah,
goes
yeah.
into Thorir's hut as he sleeps and just stabs him in the gut, and just
He, he does what the ring wraiths wanted to do to the hobbits
yeah,
in like
absolutely,
the first 40 minutes of Lord of the Rings.
exactly. Yeah, and so the next day, all is revealed. Fjolnir knows who it is, and they find the corpse of his son. But Amleth has cut out his heart and hidden his heart somewhere in the mountains.
uh yeah, which I guess they felt you needed your heart to go into the afterlife. Is that what this was all about? Because him taking Thorir's heart was a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, even if it wasn't, if your son got killed, wouldn't you want his heart back?
No. No, I wouldn't want the heart back. They make a huge deal of the
You
heart.
wouldn't be disturbed that he has no heart.
Of course I'd be disturbed, but they make it seem like he damned him when he took the
It
heart
probably
because
is a
they
big
want
deal.
the heart back. They keep him alive just so because they capture Amleth,
Well, let's get into that.
but they keep him alive just so they can get the heart back.
Yeah, the heart is important, but let's get into keeping him alive. So they know somebody has to have been helping him. So they've lined up all the slaves and are slowly killing them off one by one and saying, reveal yourself, traitor. And just before they kill Olga, Amleth is back and he yells, "Hey, if you want your son's heart back, I have it right here. I'll exchange it for her life." So she gets away. She runs away. He has been captured, and this is why they keep him alive. They're torturing him for him to get his heart back. And as they're doing it, he says, "Well, they get his heart, and then he says, 'How do you know that's your son's heart, not the heart of a dog I killed?'" And so they're torturing him to get the heart back. Um, and in this really cool scene, I love this scene. Amleth says, "You cannot kill me. It has been prophesied that we must fight. It is not my time." And he's right. So they don't kill him. Um, they leave for just a second because they need to perform this yet another ritual where they make they're going to simultaneously sacrifice a maiden to Freyr and then make. So this is where they make Gonor the other son his new heir. This is like the ritual. After this, they go back. Meanwhile, while this is all happening, in the coolest sequence ever, some ravens flying through the rafters of this barn he's being tortured in. And this flock of ravens peck at his bonds until he is freed. And he's able to continue. And that's another part of like the magical, okay, they're being saved. It's a Deus Ex Machina, but in this movie, in this like hero's journey, that's exactly where a Deus Ex Machina should be. Nowadays in movies, it's kind of known as a cop out, like, oh, someone saved at the last minute by miraculous circumstances. But
Right.
here it's like, yes, a god is literally saving him. If you don't know, ravens are associated with Odin, and they're like how he interacts with the world, how he sees things is through ravens. So Odin has sent his ravens to free him so he may fulfill his destiny.
And if I'm not mistaken, the shrine that they were in at the very beginning of the movie that him and his father like danced like wolves around was a shrine to Odin, correct?
Yes, I believe so. That is a good
Yeah.
point.
So, no, I thought that was really cool. This scene rocks.
Doesn't it?
This scene really, really rocked.
It's really cool. But yeah, so now Amleth is free, and the only thing left to do is he's lost steam. He's not as angry anymore after he's tortured Fjolnir, basically killing off his children, ruining, causing upheaval in his community. He finally has something other than hate. He has love. He's fallen in love with Olga, and they're going to escape on a ship and just go live their lives. And through a vision he sees that Olga is pregnant with twins, and
And
his kingdom will live on. And he thinks that he doesn't have to do this anymore. He can just go off and live. But last minute, they get on the ship, and he realizes Fjolnir's gonna hunt him down, and he has to go fulfill the prophecy if his family is to survive. It was foretold earlier in the movie that he would have to make the choice between vengeance and love for his family. And here he has to make that choice. He said he chooses both. So he's doing it to protect his new family. But when he gets back to Fjolnir's village, this is where he has to choose vengeance, if that makes sense. In a very Shakespearean, cruel twist of fate, he's basically forced to kill both his mother and his half brother.
he walks into the longhouse and sees his mother there, and she tries to stab him, right?
Yes.
Yeah, she tries to stab him and does wound him. Um, but he's forced to drive his like whole sword through her, basically. Um, and it's super tragic because you can tell he's hurt by it. And then shortly after, to avenge his mother's death, Goner rushes out and climbs on top of Alexander Skarsgård's back and starts stabbing him repeatedly in brutal Viking fashion with a short knife, and really, really wounds him badly. And similarly, he has to sort of twist out of it, and when he does so, he runs his sword through Goner, and he is a Goner.
Yeah. And this is, I like this scene so much because it is like the prophecy is being fulfilled even when he doesn't want it to be.
Right.
He,
Right.
the way the scene plays out, you can tell he's like accidentally killed them both. Part of the reason Goner's able to stab him so much is because he doesn't want to hurt him. He doesn't want to do anything. And we saw this earlier in the film where he saved Goner's life. Like this, he is seeing him not as Fjolnir, his enemy's child. He's seeing it as his brother, his mother's son. And this is where he has to choose the hatred for his enemy over love for his family. And then this is where Fjolnir comes in and sees his family is dead, his whole kingdom is gone, and he is a broken man at this point. And he says, "You will find me at the gates of hell." And now they're both. The scene is set for their final showdown.
And when this scene happened, right? When Fjolnir walks in and sees his family dead and sheaths his sword, I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know where it was going to go. And I thought that for sure 6'4" Alexander Skarsgård uh, fighting this older man was not going to be interesting. But I will say this before we get into it. This finale was really good. Really, really strong.
It was awesome in the biblical sense, you could say.
It was, yeah. It was awesome in the
And it
biblical.
really was. There,
No, yeah, truly.
well, mind you, Amleth has been wounded now. And so he's a little weakened going into the battle, but they climb to the top of this volcano. There is lava and ash everywhere, and now they're both shirtless. and they've got their swords and their shields, and in this long Mustafarian battle. Uh,
They're also actually completely nude.
yeah, are they?
Yeah, their butt cheeks were out.
Do we ever get any full frontal?
No,
I
I
don't.
don't
Yeah.
believe
Okay. Well, no full frontal, but yeah, they're naked.
so. They are naked and they're fighting on like volcanic rock, which I'm sure is scalding hot. Um, uh, but yeah, pretty much like early on in the fight, you watch Fjolnir consistently have the upper hand against Amleth, and you're right, it is likely due to the fact that he is already so wounded. But Amleth's his goal here has changed. He's no longer fighting to kill the man that killed his father, right? He understands the reality of that situation now. Now he is fighting to preserve his family line, as you were saying before. Something we didn't really get into is that the prophecy uh, did say that one of his children would become a maiden king, and he saw that in the vision. And so now you have all of that at stake. When he saw his children in that vision, where he saw the family tree, he saw one of his daughters wearing a crown and having a sword. Um, and you get the sense through Alexander Skarsgård's performance that I don't know, this is a changed man going into this fight. And Fjolnir is just brutalizing him, is able to knock him down, knock him onto his knees, um, and actually ends up like slicing through his chest. This like long cut through his arms and his chest that leaves him really, really weak. Now, close to death.
And while he does have the upper hand the whole time in this final scene, Amleth finds the strength to swing his sword and behead Fjolnir completely, but not before Fjolnir manages to put his sword through Amleth's chest. The prophecy has been fulfilled, yet no one walks away scot-free.
There's a fantastic moment in this really, really great scene, um, where Fjolnir realizes that he can strike down Amleth right now. He has cut through his chest, as I was saying before, gotten him down on his knees. He's wheezing, gasping for air, and he just starts to scream at his uncle. And Fjolnir, instead of striking him down, screams back. And it was almost like this, I don't know, mutual respect moment, but like in a really, really hostile way. I don't know how to explain it other than it was incredibly Viking. But
It was.
but
Uh,
Amleth rises and yeah, lops his head off.
yeah, this scene is like you said, he's been a spirit of vengeance, the whole movie. Wants nothing more than to kill his uncle. But here it feels like he feels like he's done enough. He hates his uncle because his uncle took away his life and his family. And now Amleth has taken away his uncle's life and his family. So killing him is unnecessary at this point. He is now doing it, like you said, to defend his family. And his uncle, I think, understands a little bit now with this new perspective
Right.
that Amleth is not just some villain. He's doing this for the same reason Fjolnir now wants to fight Amleth. He's basically done this whole. He's tormented Fjolnir just to get him to this spot so they can kill each other. And now Fjolnir is finally relenting to him in a way by doing it, by showing up to fight him. And they're both just broken men at this point. And as much as we wanted him to reclaim his kingdom and, live a happy ending, like this was the only way this could have ended. But we get him laying down on the igneous rock. He sheds a single tear, and a Valkyrie comes down to take his spirit to Valhall. So,
and just before she flies his body into the gates, the movie ends.
yeah. And that
We
is
don't have
like,
the spirit fly in.
that is the epic. That is the hero's journey. I
What
thought
a
it was
damn
great.
good
I
movie.
really enjoyed it.
Yeah, now talking about it, I enjoyed it more.
Yeah. I'm
I
glad
feel
we
like I need to
did.
go rewatch it. Uh, no, yeah, this is a great movie, and while it's still in theaters, I think everybody should watch it on the big screen.
It's very cinematic for sure.
Yeah. Well, and there's a lot of things that you're not going to get watching it at home. Um, there's a lot of really great sound mixing and stuff that's happening. When Amleth hears voices and such, I was sitting at the very back row of the theater I was in, and like the dissonant whispers were done so well. The soundscape it builds is so good, and I don't think you'll get that like on your sound bar. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I think this is 100% a movie theater must watch. Like you got to go there and see it.
I mean, definitely. Preferably you saw it before you listened to this.
God, I hope so.
But
And if not, like renting it is fine. You can watch it at home and you'll love it.
Anya Taylor-Joy, man. I I have always thought she was fantastic, but everything I see her in, I love her just a little bit more. Like,
No, yeah, she's so good.
oh, she's amazing. She's a well-respected actress, but she's like kind of known for her horror work, and I love that. I mean, that's such a like I don't know that genre in general does not receive the respect it deserves, and I'm glad that even with that, she's got such a big name for herself, and like everything she
Mhm.
is in, she seems to like really pour her heart into.
Well, and it's because of directors like Robert Eggers and studios like A24 that horror is becoming a more critically accepted genre, I should say. Because, of course, the fans, we love it. But
Of course,
critically, these movies don't do well. And The Northman is not a horror movie, but Robert Eggers is a fantastic horror director.
yeah,
And he's proven that. And those skills came over to this movie.
yeah,
And there are some terrifying parts of this movie, too.
oh
Like
yeah. Well,
the corpse horse,
the corpse horse is bone chilling.
yeah, that's horror imagery, you
That
know?
is horror imagery. You will not find that, in your slasher.
No, so
But
I agree. I'm glad that she is so celebrated now.
yeah, well, you say it's like studios like A24, but like with A24, with these movies, with the rise of these like critically respected horror movies, um, they happened because of good actors like Anya Taylor-Joy. Like she had a big part in this like newfound respect. But yeah, I this movie isn't a horror movie. I think Robert Eggers even said he was gonna not direct a horror movie before he made this movie.
Mm,
Um, I'll say quote unquote not a horror movie, but Vikings are horrifying.
they are,
And
absolutely.
if you are afraid of horror movies, if scary things scare you, then don't watch this movie because it is horrifying and scary. And
Yeah.
it's, I don't know, tonally not a horror movie, but like, yes, it is horrifying.
And I should clarify, Robert Eggers has done a lot of, or his two other movies were done with A24. This movie, he departed from them. So this was not done with A24. I should just put that out there. Um, Nonetheless, right, where he is today would have never happened without that studio. Same with Anya Taylor-Joy. I know there's some drama there, but
Yeah.
that happened, and I don't know what it is. But this movie is fantastic, and though it is a huge departure from the work that I enjoy from him, I cannot wait to see what is next for him after this. Everybody and their mother's going to want to work with Robert Eggers after this movie, if they didn't already want to.
Yeah. I mean, the scope of this movie, like just the ambition of its production and then the scope of the film itself is so grand, and yet it is executed so well that like it's just truly impressive. It's like I'm glad I got to go to a movie theater and watch a movie I was impressed by. Because when was the last time that happened?
Yeah,
The day
I agree.
before I went to the theater, and was almost as impressed, but not quite as impressed with Sonic 2. So
Oh man. Did you watch Sonic 2?
I sure did.
Wow.
It was
Incredible.
phenomenal, but
That's a conversation for another day.
yeah, let's record an episode about Sonic 2 after this.
Okay. But yeah, if you haven't seen The Northman, go watch it. 89% from critics on Rotten Tomatoes. I think the fans like it. Everyone I know loved it. So um, it's really worth a watch. And again, I feel passionately that you have to watch it in the theater.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Very good film. Please watch it. Please, Robert Eggers. Thank you. You know, thank. I don't know. Well, I think that wraps it up for me. What about you?
No, me too.
All right. Well, thank you so much for talking about this movie and seeing it.
It was my pleasure.
Mine too. All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for listening. Praise Odin.